This is the culmination of several weeks of planning and work. In order to get all the electrical put in place, I had to plan out the exact layout of the kitchen. With the layout set, I could put all the electrical in place and run new water lines. I planned it out to have separate circuits for all the main appliances, and 2 different circuits for the countertop outlets. I also wired 2 switches near the sink, one for the light above the sink, and the other for the garbage disposal. My wife wanted a pot filler above the stove, so I also spent a day under the house running a line for that, as well as a new line for the fridge. It was very important to document the inside of the walls, because if there's any issues down the road, I'll use this footage for reference to diagnose the issue. I didn't film much of the electrical work because it was dark most of the time, but here you can see the tail end of it when I cleaned up some of the wiring. In fact, I spent so much time in the attic that I came up with a quick way to maneuver around. I had bumped my head too many times on the rafters. Another thing I did was cut a hole for the new door. We wanted to extend the kitchen a bit, and the only way was to move a door. This wall used to be an exterior wall. Drywall was put right on top of the stucco. Okay, all the work on the guts was done, and it was time to seal up the walls. Today was an all-hands-on-deck kind of day. We had an assembly line process going in order to get everything done. If it was just me working on my own, it would have taken a few days, but with good help, we got this done all in one day. I don't know how structurally sound the house is, but any chance I get to beef it up, I'll take. California is susceptible to big earthquakes, and I want this house to pull through if a big one hits. None of these walls have sheathing on the outside, so I decided to add some to the inside. This would also make putting the drywall on much easier. A team of 2 went through and added blocks along the bottom of the framing to give an extra place to screw into. Meanwhile, my buddy Sean and I started on the sheathing. We had to cut holes for any outlet boxes, and as we put the plywood on, we pulled the electrical lines through. We were also sure to mark all the studs behind the plywood and put in more than enough screws to lock it into place. We also added extra blocks at the seams of the sheathing to give an extra spot to screw into. This wall used to be an exterior wall, so the face on the other side have thick cement stucco under the drywall. Just for the sake of energy efficiency, we put insulation in this wall in addition to the window wall that faces the outside. There's a sub panel on the other side of the wall with several large lines of cable running up, so we didn't put insulation in that section. Okay, with all the sheathing on, it was time for drywall. We started at a different spot so the seams of the drywall would be staggered with the seams of the sheathing. When we cut holes for the outlets in the sheathing, we cut them bigger for efficiency's sake. When cutting the holes in the drywall, we were much more precise to make a snug fit. Most of this drywall will not be seen because it'll be hidden behind cabinets and tiling, but I wanted to be sure to have a complete backing when tiling later on. The hardest hole to make was the small hole for the pot filler. We measured and remeasured several times before cutting. In just that day, we closed up all the walls with the exception of underneath the window. I still had a few things to do there before sealing it up. Once that was ready, I followed the same process with sheathing and drywall. I had to cut it in parts to work around all the plumbing and electrical sticking out of the wall. The next step for the kitchen will be to slap on a new ceiling. I'll explain in the next video. That's it for now. See ya!